The latest film from Christopher Nolan, who effectively made $1 billion for Warner Brothers with The Dark Knight, and this very much looks like Warner said to him, "Okay, you made us $1 billion, go do whatever you want." So the story is that Leonardo DiCaprio works in the area of psychological espionage, getting inside people's minds to unlock and perhaps safeguard their secrets. And bear in mind, this is a complicated plot. I'll just explain as much of it as possible. He's got a secret of his own because following the untimely death of his wife, he has been unable to go home to where his children are because somehow he has been implicated in her death. A very powerful businessman comes to him and offers him as a proposition a job which apparently will solve all his problems. But the job is to do something which no one's quite sure whether you can do it, which is inception, which is not just to get inside somebody's mind, in this case Cillian Murphy's mind, but to implant in their mind an idea which that person will then think is their own. So as you can see, and as the tagline explains, this summer the crime scene is your mind. So it's a psychological thriller, it's an espionage thriller, it's in some respects a sort of James Bond action thriller, all taking place in the mind of its protagonist, of the Cillian Murphy character. So in order to do this last job, which will somehow redeem him and save him, if he can pull off the impossible, he must get together a team of people to create a dream in which this espionage can be carried out. So when Cillian Murphy came on the show last week, he was very, very keen that we didn't reveal more details of the plot than necessary. I think it's weird because you and I have had a conversation, Simon, about how much you need to know before you see the film. I know you've seen it, so I'll tell you what I think first. I think on one level this is Dreamscape with A-levels, and I think that's a very good thing because I always liked Dreamscape. On another level, it's like a Bond movie. It's like On Her Majesty's Psychiatric Service. It's a Bond movie taking place in somebody's head. What's really interesting is that in Batman Begins, I think what you saw there was a $100 million art movie, and in the case of this, you've got a really, really expensive blockbuster that is every bit as complicated as something like Memento. And I remember when I saw it, and I've seen it twice now. I saw it the first time. I thought, what's extraordinary is for a film that costs this much money, to ask the audience to try this hard to keep up is really impressive, because it is a movie in which you absolutely cannot go to the toilet. The advice that you need to know for this is make sure you are not going to require a toilet break, because if you go out for 2 or 3 minutes, you're going to come back in, you're going to be completely lost. There is one lovely line in it, which I've quoted before, in which Ellen Page's character actually says, "Sorry, whose subconscious are we in at the moment?" And every layer of the film makes sense in that puzzle way that Memento does, but you really, really have to try hard to keep up. It looks fantastic. It's shot by Wally Pfister, who, of course, now is known as this great blockbuster cinematographer. Wally Pfister started out shooting straight-to-video erotic thrillers for Greg Dark. He was a man about whom Sight and Sound once said, "There's a man who knows how to light underwear." And he's now lighting the biggest, movies in the world. And the film looks fantastic. The special effects are really exciting. I mean, obviously, some of it is digital when you see, you will have seen this from the trailers, things of street scenes folding in upon themselves. But what's really impressive is how much of that stuff is done mechanically, and Christopher Nolan has said the reason he wanted to do it mechanically was because when you're in the dream world, he wanted the actors to have a sense of the physical reality of it, otherwise it would cease to have any heft, any weight, and I think that's a very sensible decision. Some of the stuff you see, like the scene again, which is in the trailer, of the corridor which appears to go into zero gravity, that's a mechanical trick. I mean, obviously there is CGI work in it, but that's done mechanically, and I think that pays off. Leonardo DiCaprio is really growing up very nicely. I mean, he's actually turned into a very impressive actor. Ellen Page is terrific. Cillian Murphy has that really sort of strange, ethereal, slightly fractured quality. Incidentally, hello to Cillian Murphy, because I think we should add him to the list of hello to Jason Isaacs and hello to David Morrissey, who you're doing on stage over the weekend.
No, I keep telling you this. I know. I'm interviewing Paul Greengrass at the Latitude
Paul
Festival.
Greengrass. Why do I keep thinking it's David Morrissey?
Because you're a fool.
Okay, you're doing Paul Greengrass, but hello to Paul Greengrass, hello to David Morrissey, but particularly hello to Cillian Murphy. And finally, before I give you your say on this, two last things. Firstly, Chris Nolan said that he was asked to look at it in 3D, and in the end, the road that he's gone down is IMAX, and he thinks, it seems, that he has the same reservations about 3D that I have, that that actually the dimness is a problem, and in fact, the IMAX experience is much more immersive, and I agree with that. The other thing is the question of whether or not this will make enough money to be genuinely a blockbuster, and I really hope it does, because wouldn't it be great if a movie this complicated, if a movie that aims this high, if a movie that treats its audience as being this smart actually took a huge amount of money, there would be no excuse for Hollywood bosses to say, oh, well, we had to dumb it down to get a mainstream audience. If this gets a huge mainstream audience, it will demonstrate that the studios have been wrong in assuming that somehow people want dumb movies, that actually people are able to keep up. If a film says, come on, do the legwork, put the hours in, engage your brain, then it's going to work. And the other key question is, when you look at something like Titanic, which was a massive, massive hit, it was a huge hit because of repeat viewing. And one of the things people said about this is, well, it won't have the same repeat viewing because people went to see Titanic over and over again because they loved the tragic love story. I suggest that people will go and see Inception more than once, because you come out of it the first time and go, okay, now I need to go back and watch it again in the same way as Memento to see if it really fits together in the way that I thought it did. I thought it was knockout, and I was really impressed that a movie that's that big and that expensive aimed that high. Simon, your verdict.
Oh, right, so now it's my turn, even though we're 6 minutes late for the travel. So what I'll do is I'll just say one thing, and we'll take some travel, then we'll do some listeners' emails on this. And everyone knows how boring you are when you go on about 3D. However, on this particular film, you do leave it, I think everyone will think this, there are so many dimensions within the film that if it was projected in 3D, it would just be too much and would be a whole lot less enjoyable, which is something. Rob Howard on this, Dear Architect and Extractor. You have to see the film together. I was lucky enough to get along to an advanced screening of Inception at the IMAX on Monday, which is when I saw it, and it completely blew my mind, said Rob. I'd heard very little about the film before I saw it, but I've loved everything that Christopher Nolan has done before, and I was aware that for once this was a film not based on an existing franchise or a sequel, but an actual original idea conceived by Nolan himself. As a result, I didn't really know what to expect other than a solidly delivered movie with a more than capable lead performance from DiCaprio. What I got was something truly sublime, says Rob. The concepts took almost the length of the movie to fully digest, but I did as Dr. K recommended, keep up with the plot, which slotted together awesomely. Having read the prequel comic, my suspicions of a Matrix-like universe expansion potential seem to have been confirmed. Hopefully they don't make a similar mess out of it. Movie of the year without a doubt, says Rob. Dan in Stoke Newington. Chris Nolan should be commended for his ambition and admirable attempts to present us with innovative ideas on screen. However, he has overextended himself with Inception. It felt like the director had obsessively devoured a library on psychology and the dream-reality dichotomy, but had not quite decided where he sat on the issue. The resulted muddled, overly talky screenplay felt like a second draft, as if the dialogue was actually Nolan's own internal monologue. He was wrestling with the material and trying to figure out what his own thoughts were on the material.
First one I agree with entirely. As far as the second one's concerned, I don't think it read like a second draft screenplay. In fact, I think what was impressive about it was that there was fairly little Basil exposition stuff. I didn't think there was huge sections of people explaining the plot to each other. I didn't think it was overly talky. Actually, what's quite clever about it is that an awful lot of what it does conceptually, it does visually. I mean, it is in the end a film that is a film rather than a film that is an essay. I understand that when I was watching it, I thought there will be a certain section of the audience that will be alienated by this because it seems so fantastically convoluted. But after a while, the convolutions actually start to ease up because you just start to relax into the various levels. We haven't really sort of talked about this since you've seen it. I know that you enjoyed it. Did you have any trouble keeping up with it?
I think there is a section, it takes about half an hour. It's a bit like getting used to hearing someone speak in a strong accent. It takes about 20 minutes, half an hour to get into the rhythm and to understand the language of the film. But the most complex bit, as we described last week, is where they're inside Cillian Murphy's head and they go down the different levels of the dream. So they're in a dream, then they go into another dream, and then they go into another dream. And you do find yourself thinking, right, that bit there with the truck, that's the level 1, that bit there is level 2. But I think that works. And in fact, there's an email here from Martin Hagger in Nottingham, whose concluding point is, the plot is labyrinthine in construction, but he says you feel that getting lost is purposeful, and at no time do you feel that the film is losing its way. And I think he's right, that if you feel a bit lost, I think that's fine. I think you're supposed to, because as Cillian Murphy said last week, when they picked up the scripts to start with, they didn't have a clue what was going on either. So I think if you get lost, you're getting lost in good company and to a purpose.
I think that's a very, very insightful email. I also think that that's part of the plot, because part of the story is about the characters getting lost themselves.
The latest from Christopher Nolan, who effectively made, $1 billion for Warner Brothers with The Dark Knight, and this very much looks like Warner said to him, "Okay, you made us $1 billion. Go do whatever you want." So the story is that Leonardo DiCaprio works in the area of psychological espionage, getting inside people's minds to unlock and perhaps safeguard their secrets. And bear in mind, this is a complicated plot. I'll just explain as much of it as possible. He's got a secret of his own because following the untimely death of his wife, he has been unable to go home to where his children are because somehow he has been implicated in her death.